Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
I gotta tell you, living in an HOA community can be a real pain in the ass sometimes. Don't get me wrong, I understand the need for some rules and regulations to keep the neighborhood looking nice, but sometimes it feels like they're just out to get us homeowners. Take our grass cutting rules, for example. The CCRs say we gotta keep our lawns mowed from May to October. Seems simple enough, right? But here's where it gets tricky. There's no clear standard for what mowed actually means. Is it 2 inches, 4 inches? Who the hell knows? So every month this property manager lady comes around with her iPad, snapping pictures of our yards like she's some kind of grass paparazzi. And then boom, next thing you know you're getting a nasty letter in the mail telling you your grass is too long. But how long is too long? That's the million-dollar question. I mean, I get it. Nobody wants to live next door to a house that looks like it's been abandoned to the wilderness. But come on, there's gotta be some middle ground here. Some folks might think a nice lush 3-inch lawn looks great, while others want it buzzed down to putting green height. Who's right? According to our HOA, it's whatever mood the property manager is in that day. And let me tell you, it's not just the grass. Oh no, they've got opinions on everything. Your mailbox is the wrong shade of beige, your garden gnome is offensive to the neighborhood aesthetic, your Christmas lights stayed up 2 days too long. It's always something. The frustrating part is that these decisions are made by someone who doesn't even reside in our community. This property manager, bless her heart, is just doing her job, I guess. But she's not elected, she's not a homeowner here, and as far as I can tell, she's just winging it based on her personal preferences. Now, I'm not saying we should get rid of all the rules. Like I said, I get why we have them. But wouldn't it make more sense for the actual HOA board, the people who live here and were elected by us, to set some clear, measurable standards? That way, we'd all know exactly what's expected of us. Instead, we're left guessing. Is my grass too long? Is my fence the right color? Am I allowed to park my car in my own driveway overnight? It's like playing a game where the rules change every time you turn around. The reality is that it's not just annoying, it can also lead to potentially dangerous situations. When you've got vague rules being enforced by one person's judgment, you're opening the door to all sorts of problems. What if the property manager doesn't like you? What if they've got some unconscious bias they're not even aware of? Suddenly, you could find yourself getting fined for stuff your neighbors are getting away with. I've talked to some of my neighbors about this, and let me tell you, I'm not the only one who feels this way. We've all got stories about ridiculous fines or warnings we've received. Like my buddy Dave, he got a letter saying his trash cans were visible from the street. What's truly baffling is that it was trash day, and the cans had been out for all of 30 minutes before the garbage truck came. Or take my neighbor Jody. She's got this beautiful garden in her front yard, flowers, shrubs, the whole 9 yards. She takes real pride in it, spends hours out there every week. Well, one day she gets a letter saying her landscaping is not in keeping with neighborhood standards. What does that even mean? The place looks like a damn botanical garden. It's not that we're trying to be difficult. We all want our neighborhood to look nice. But it feels like we're constantly walking on eggshells, never knowing when we might run afoul of some unwritten rule. And let's talk about the fines for a second. They're not cheap, let me tell you. Get a couple of those in a year and you're looking at a pretty significant hit to your wallet. All because someone decided your grass was a ½ inch too tall or your house paint was a shade too dark. Now, I've tried talking to the HOA board about this. You know what they told me? We trust our property management company to enforce the CCRs fairly. Well, that's great and all. But what about when they don't? What recourse do we have? Sure, there's an appeals process. But let me tell you, it's about as fun as a root canal. You gotta fill out all these forms, provide evidence, and then wait for the board to review your case. And even then, there's no guarantee they'll side with you. After all, they're the ones who hired the property management company in the first place. I've even looked into the legality of some of these fines. From what I can tell, without clear objective standards, a lot of them probably wouldn't hold up in court. But who's got the time or money to take their HOA to court over a $100 fine? It's just not worth it for most folks. And that's the real problem here. The HOA knows we're not likely to fight back, so they can pretty much do whatever they want. It's a system that's ripe for abuse, even if that abuse is unintentional. I've talked to some friends who live in other HOA communities, and it seems like this is a pretty common problem. Some of them have it even worse than we do. One guy told me his HOA tried to fine him for having an unapproved color of flowers in his garden. Can you believe that? Since when do flowers need to be approved? It's not that I'm against all rules. Like I said before, I get why we need some standards. I don't want to live next to a house with junk cars in the front yard any more than the next guy. But there's got to be a better way to handle this. I think the solution is pretty simple, really. The HOA board needs to sit down and come up with some clear, measurable standards for the most common issues. Like, say, grass can't be more than 4 inches tall, or fences need to be painted every 5 years. Something concrete that we can all understand and follow. And then what really matters is that they need to communicate these standards to all the homeowners. Send out a nice little booklet or something. That way we all know exactly what's expected of us. No more guessing games, no more subjective judgments from the property manager. But you know what? I'm not holding my breath. I've been to enough HOA meetings to know that change comes slow around here. It's easier for them to just keep things the way they are, even if it's driving us homeowners nuts. So for now, I guess I'll just keep mowing my lawn every week, hoping it meets whatever arbitrary standard the property manager has in mind this month. And I'll keep my fingers crossed that I don't wake up one day to find a fine in my mailbox because my garden gnome is wearing the wrong color hat or something equally ridiculous. You know, it's funny. When we first moved into this neighborhood, I was actually excited about the HOA. I thought it would help keep property values up, make sure the neighborhood stayed nice, and in some ways it has. But man, I never realized how much stress it would add to my life. Every time I want to make a change to my house, paint the shutters, put up a new fence, even plant a tree, I gotta go through this whole approval process. And even then, there's no guarantee they'll say yes. It's like living in a fancy prison sometimes, I swear. But what can you do? We signed the agreement when we bought the house. We knew what we were getting into. Or at least we thought we did. I don't think any of us realized just how nitpicky things would get. I've thought about trying to get on the HOA board myself, you know, be the change you want to see and all that. But honestly, I don't have the time or energy for it. Between work and family, I've got enough on my plate without adding HOA drama to the mix. So I guess for now, I'll just keep doing my best to follow the rules, or at least what I think the rules are. And I'll keep hoping that someday someone on that board will realize how ridiculous some of this stuff is and decide to make some changes. Until then, I'll be out here, ruler in hand, measuring my grass and praying it's short enough to pass muster, because heaven forbid my lawn be a 1/4 inch too tall. That might just bring down the whole neighborhood, right? You know, it's not all bad. I mean, the neighborhood does look nice. The common areas are well maintained, the streets are clean, and most of the houses look pretty good. I guess that's the trade-off we make. We give up a little freedom in exchange for a nice-looking community, but man, some days it just feels like too much. Like we're living in some kind of suburban dystopia where the color of your mailbox is more important than the content of your character. I wonder sometimes what the founders of our little community would think if they could see how things are now. Did they envision this level of micromanagement when they set up the HOA, or has it just evolved over time into this nitpicky monster? Either way, I guess we're stuck with it for now. Unless we want to sell our house and move, which isn't really an option for us right now. So we'll keep playing by the rules, or trying to anyway, and hope that someday someone will come to their senses and realize that maybe, just maybe, the world won't end if someone's grass is a little bit too long. In the meantime, I'll be here, keeping an eye out for that property manager and her iPad, because you never know when she might decide that my perfectly manicured lawn is suddenly in violation of some unwritten rule. And heaven help me if that happens. I might just have to stage a one-man rebellion. You know, let my grass grow a whole 5 inches tall. That'll show 'em. But seriously, all joking aside, I really do hope that someday we can find a better balance, a way to keep our neighborhood looking nice without turning it into a totalitarian regime. Because at the end of the day, this is our home, and home should be a place where you can relax, not a place where you're constantly worried about breaking some obscure rule. So here's to hoping for a future with clearer standards, fairer enforcement, and maybe, just maybe, a little more common sense. Because let's face it, life's too short to spend it worrying about whether your grass is a 1/2 inch too tall. There are more important things in life than that, like enjoying your home, spending time with your family, and maybe even getting to know your neighbors. You know, the stuff that really makes a community great. Until then, I guess I'll just keep my lawnmower handy and my fingers crossed. Because in this HOA-governed world, you never know when you might need to do an emergency mow to avoid the wrath of the property manager. It's a crazy world we live in, folks. But hey, at least the lawns look nice, sigh. I swear, HOAs dig their own holes with homeowners. The management companies are the bullies. It's like they have a hobby of fining you into oblivion. Every time they catch you, they rack up those admin fees. And if things escalate, well, they're double dipping by charging the HOA too. It's really up to the board to keep the property managers in check, but let's be honest, that's wishful thinking most of the time. It's largely because most HOAs take the approach of trying to keep everything within spec, instead of simply stating what is outside of spec. Grass and lawns in general is a perfect example. The HOA creates a rule around an ideal. Grass must be no taller than 5, no weeds, etc. Most municipal ordinances are created from the opposite point of view, and generally state that grass and weeds need to be kept under a certain height that is taller than what almost all lawn equipment will cut. The practical result is that the HOA is focused on everything being right as opposed to creating rules geared to correcting things that are wrong.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.